All right, so now moving things along here, let's go ahead and add a collision for our mountain. So what I want to do is convert this into a VDB, but we can use a shelf tool here. If we just kind of choose our static object under the collisions, it's going to create that for us. So let's go in here. So it's created our VDB attributes that we're converting into here. So let's just view the VDB, and it's pretty low resolution. So let's select our collision source. Let's go to the volume tab. I'm just going to break this voxel size connection. I'm going to manually put in my own. And I'm just going to bring it down to something better here. So 0.2, you see how fast that was? Maybe a little better, 0.15. So now we've got a really fast and accurate collision. That looks pretty good. So let's just write this out and cache this out here. So into the file cache, let's go write this out, put it into, let's call this volcano 01. Let's call this volcano VDB. All right, so I'm just going to save out this current frame, save that to disk, and now let's just load that in because it's got the $FF expression. When we change frames, it's going to error out and not load it up. So I've got it here, volcano VDB. Let's load that from disk. And one thing I like to do, and it's just kind of habit, if we go to the load from file, under missing frame, I always like to choose no geometry, because when it comes to rendering, you can really forget these types of things, but the whole render will just hang and will not render anything at all because it's erroring out on this any type of missing frame that there wasn't any data. We're gonna have no geometry loaded if it errors. All right, so there's our mountain, and it's quick to view. I don't mind viewing the VDB just for reference anyways. So if we go to our DOP network, you'll see that we now have static object merged in here. Let's take a look at our object here, and let's make sure our collisions are good. So let's go to collisions and view the collision guide. So you can see our collision guide here. It's pretty heavy and starting to hang a little bit. All right, so now let's just kind of press play, and we can view our collision, what the pyrosolver is actually viewing for collisions here. So if we press play here, let's, hold on, make sure to hide our display geometry here. So this is what actually is being viewed and calculated so far from the pyrosolver. So we can see that if we kind of toggle on and off the display geometry here, we're getting pretty accurate representation collision here. Okay, so, and that's nice and fast. Perfect, so I know those collisions are working. So now I'm just going to modify our source even further. Let's go to our pyrosolver. One thing I know is I don't want there to be so much flame staying around for very long. And this is where I really encourage you to start kind of going into the pyro settings and really experimenting with all the different settings and finding out for yourself what each parameter really does. And you'll get the hang of it if you're familiar with previous versions of Houdini. So the flame lifespan I'm going to bring down to 2. I want to emit a lot of smoke off the emitter, or off the fire. And I don't want to remap the flame. This is for that preset. I just want to emit a lot of smoke off of these values here of the flame. And then the temperature, let's just put that to regular 1, and I'm going to add this in. And I want to add temperature not in an area, but in full range from 0 to 1. So I'm adding temperature everywhere. And then the expansion, we're just going to leave like that. We've already brought that down. Okay. So also I'm just going to dial in a couple of settings on the shape tab. And I know this just from kind of going back and forth between the settings. I don't want any dissipation for now because it's a volcano and things stay in the sky for days and weeks. So I don't really want it to dissipate at all. And I'm going to keep the disturbance as it was. I'm going to add in some turbulence. So I'm going to add a turbulence of value of 1 to kind of kick things around. But I want to make sure that it's really, really big values. Like we're kind of like, so it's going to be kind of wind in the sky kicking things around. So I want the swirl size to be huge. And this is done by trial and error. Swirl size of 50. And we're going to keep it like that for now. And finally, mainly if you notice, a lot of explosions, you're going to want to key on and off certain values. So before we change these settings here, so before changing anything else, let's just take a flip book, say the first 75 frames of what's kind of going on here. And maybe I'm going to view the mountain. Let's go to our camera here. And let's kind of just, let's view this. So let's take a flip book of this. All right, I'm just going to stop this halfway here. And because I can kind of see what's going on instantly, you can see that it's really fast. Everything's rising really quickly. And yeah, okay, well, that's a good starting point. So let's just keep working forward. I know that to reduce this plume on the top, I want to reduce that kind of mushroom effect, although a volcano does quite have this mushroom effect that happens. But I want to kind of just fade it on. So to do that, what contributes mainly to that expansion and all that is the burn and divergence field. So I'm just going to set a couple of keys. Let's just go to, let's key on at the beginning frame. And let's kind of go to frame 16, key that again. And then by the end, I want it to fade off. Say by frame 45, I don't want it to be constantly emitting all this heat and temperature, burn and divergence. So I'm going to just have it slowly kind of die off, but just keep emitting in a small value. So if we just press shift and left click, we can open up our ramp here. And for this, just kind of make it a bit more interesting. I'm going to select the Bezier handles here and just kind of give it some interest here. So we emit, it kind of goes up and then down again. So that should make things a little more interesting. And now to properly use our velocity, I know that a value of 1 isn't really doing much, so I'm going to make sure to crank this up a little bit. Let's turn this to 30. And I found this by just trial and error. I wanted to kind of kick it out a little bit, so it's going to make sure to hit the sides of the volcano. So we really get to see it come out from the full spout here. And finally, since we're adding a ton of density from the burn here, from the smoke burn or the flame burn, I'm not going to add any density in here at all. So I'm just going to choose that to none, but we have it there if we want it. That's pretty much it. All right, so let's go ahead and take a flip book of this, and we'll see you in the next lesson.